Coming up on this episode of Common Denominator.
So my first thought was, okay, I'm inside something. I can still breathe, so it's not a shark, because there are obviously big sharks as well. It can only be a whale.
Hi, and welcome to Common Denominator, where we focus on human connection and what brings us together. I'm Moshe Popack, and today, an incredible story of survival and how to keep cool in a near-death experience. Rainer Schimpf is a wildlife photographer. Back in 2019, he was in the ocean in South Africa, where he was attacked by a 15-ton Brutus whale. He survived and now has one of the most amazing stories you've ever heard. Before we chat with Rainer, a quick reminder that if you like the show, please subscribe and follow me on social media at @mpopack. Now here's my conversation with Rainer Schimpf. Enjoy. Hi, Rainer, and welcome to Common Denominator.
Thank you very much indeed to be on the show. I'm most honored.
So, the story, I just want to go back 4 years ago, March 2019. So you're in South Africa and you're a wildlife photographer and you're shooting basically pictures of a sardine run. So just before that, let's just tell the audience what is a sardine run, because for lay people.
Yeah, that's very important to know. So some people call it the biggest marine migration in the Southern Hemisphere, where fish, predominantly sardines, red eyes, and anchovy, migrate along the coast from about the Algalas banks up northwards towards the Mozambican border, which is an area stretching about 2,500 kilometers, closely to 2,000 miles. And the fish, obviously, they don't swim in one huge show. They are in pockets. And over that period from about November, December to about July, they conquer that area and they move up because there is a countercurrent during that period running against the Algalas current, which is coming southwards from Mozambique down. And that countercurrent in which the fish swims northwards is filled with plankton, and the plankton is the food source for the sardines. So they follow basically their food up the coast. And followed are these fish, obviously, by predators such as whales, dolphins, seabirds, predominantly gannets, penguins, and seagulls. And these predators feed on the sardines. So for us, I'm running a tour company called Expert Tours, and we host tourists and normal interested wildlife photographers as well as film crews. And for most of the people, it is the kind of holy grail to see a bait ball. And a bait ball basically is when the predators, such as dolphins and whales and sharks, are able to capture the fish in a certain area in the water, and then are able to push the fish up towards the surface of the ocean, where the fish loses a dimension. And then they form a ball, which is called bait ball, to basically pretend to be bigger than they are, because they form one ball, and to a predator, it looks like one fish instead of many thousands of fish. And that bait ball then is attacked by all those predators. And this is what most of the production companies and as well, obviously, the private people want to see.
So you have a group of people with you. I just wanted to paint the picture and understand it. And you're on a boat, kind of following these sardines up the run. Is that and trying to get the photography, right? Is that
correct? Yes. So depending on the month of the year, we are at different locations along the coast, between pretty much Mossel Bay, Cape St. Francis, Port Elizabeth, and depending on how long the run happens up the wild coast towards Coffee Bay. And we are based on land, but we have boats going out to find the sardines, to find the action. And then depending on the wishes of the customers, some only want to see the sea chickens, some only want to see the sharks, others want to see the whole picture. We basically try to find what the customers want. And then they either take surface images or film, and others just watch, and some want to go in the water. And on that particular day, when it happened in March 2019, there was a crew with me which wanted to do underwater footage. And we went out, and I decided after we found the action, which was a lot of birds diving, and there was a lot of sharks on the surface, that I wanted to check out the visibility first before I let the clients in the water. So I slid off the boat with my camera and with my snorkel and with two security snorkelers, and we approached the bait ball to a distance of about 10 to 5 meters. And we watched, and it was just within the first minute where suddenly it became dark.
So in other words, it became dark because you were actually stuck in a whale's mouth.
At the first second, I obviously didn't instantly know it was a whale. So, I mean, it takes a moment to process in your brain. So my first thought was, okay, I'm inside something. I can still breathe. So it's not a shark, because there are obviously big sharks as well. It can only be a whale. And if it's a whale, it's most likely a Bryde's whale, because we didn't, on that particular bait ball, we didn't see Bryde whales before. And my next thought was that a Bryde whale is a baleen, a toothless baleen, which feeds basically without teeth. And hence it can't bite me as such. It can't swallow me because its throat is about only the size of a lower arm. So it cannot swallow me. So it has to spit me out. But I also knew, because we worked in an area far offshore, that where it happened, it was about 80 meters deep. And normally the whale go through the bait ball from underneath up. This one came from behind. And normally once they have the fish in their mouth, which it did, including myself, they dive down. And my fear was that it'll dive down quite deep. And I didn't know at that moment whether it's going to dive 20 meters, 40 meters, 50 meters, or when it's going to spit me out. So my thought was I must brace myself for a long dive and make sure I have enough air in my lungs to get back up on the surface.
Wow. I mean, I want to highlight, if it was me, right? I'm there in the ocean, something like that happened to me, all of those thoughts would not happen. So I think of, training, right? The fact that you're, this is your space, this is what you work in, and that human conditioning, that you're able to figure out, this is a whale, this is, and they can't swallow me, the size of the throat. All of those things are able to calm you down. Like, there's so much fears that people have, and I'm thinking, if they were only able to understand the reality of the situation, of the real risks, and on the consciousness and understand it, they'd probably be pretty calm. It seems to me that you were seemingly calmer. I mean, you were worried the whale was gonna dive down, but it seemed like you were pretty process oriented. It seems like that you knew it would be okay.
Firstly, once you're in that situation, there is not much you can do against it or about it. So it all happened very fast, and obviously talking about it and processing your head, time becomes relative. So it obviously felt much longer than it really was, but there was never a space where I had time for fear. It was just pure instinct and reaction. And as you mentioned, experience. I mean, not experience being inside a whale, but experience to how a situation normally evolves and finishes. And therefore, I was also aware that I was inside that whale. I didn't want to hurt it. It didn't want to get hurt. So the sensibility and the sensitivity of the whale obviously was also there. And I was hoping for that, which it proved to be very sensitive, because within 3 seconds, it realized there's something in my mouth which doesn't belong there. If I would try to swallow it, it would hurt me. So let's get rid of it. And he spat me out. And fortunately, then Heinz Toppitzer was able to capture that moment, because nobody ever, anywhere in the world, would have believed that story if there wasn't that picture.
Wow. Was there, I mean, I think about, was it, when the whale kind of swelled, was it painful? Did your body get hurt? Did something happen?
Well, I didn't have a black spot, a bruise, or anything. But there was a moment where I could feel that there was some pressure on my hips. Whether that was when I went in or when I went out, I don't know exactly. But you must understand that 15-meter long whale, which is like 2 school buses behind each other with 15 tons of weight, only the head weighs 3 tons. So had the whale be less cautious or less sensitive, it would have been nothing for him to crush me and just break all my bones in my body. So it didn't. And it obviously showed a lot of mercy and respect for me as a creature which doesn't belong there, and just spat me out, which is awesome.
I know that, I was thinking about like dolphins have that high sensitivity more than even like consciousness more than humans. Are whales also like that? They have that similar kind of knowledge?
Well, they're obviously related. And if you speak about dolphins use much more capacity in their brain than we as humans are able to. So you would think, obviously nobody knows exactly, but you would think that a whale is similar in that perspective to a dolphin. Hence, I'm pretty sure that they're very aware of what's happening around them. And I'm also sure that the circumstances leading to the fact that I ended up inside his mouth was due to a circumstance which we don't know about, but it might be that the whale was blind on one eye, or that it was hampered by maybe a dolphin swimming in front of him and he couldn't see me. And then I ended up inside. That was the point.
Was there any time while, it was just a few seconds, but in the first moments, because it could be your mind's just racing, did you black out at all? Or you were conscious the whole time?
No, I was there the whole time. And when I got out again, I wasn't exactly sure what happened. I was pretty sure I was inside, but since it was black around me, and I had the mask on and the snorkel, so I couldn't really smell either. So I thought I was in, but I wasn't sure. So we all, the three of us, the safety diver, snorkels, and myself, we swam back to the boat, and I asked the guys, "Have you seen anything, or did you take any images?" And Heinz obviously said, "Well, I've taken some images, but I cannot really see on the boat, so we have to look at it later tonight." And then we climbed back on the boat. We checked if everybody was all right. The camera was all right. So 10 minutes later, I was back in the water and we filmed on.
Wow. So, I'm thinking, I'm just this is like blowing my mind a little bit. So, what was going through your mind? Obviously, so there was the fear that the whale would bring you down underwater. That's one area. So then you get spit out and you realize that, that you're alive. What was going on in your mind at the time? Like that you're alive, that you didn't go underwater, and that you'll be okay?
Well, I was grateful that the whale understood that I wasn't food, and that, to my knowledge, it had never happened before, and it was never happened to be captured on camera either. So the chances of happening it again in the same hour or time frame is basically zero. So we got back and filmed on, which was great.
And that's amazing. You weren't shaken up at all. You weren't feeling
well,
like.
Well, my mask was a little bit skew when I came up, wow. But that was about it.
I'm listening to this. This is a tremendous lesson for everybody. In the end of the day, is you just keep on going. And how does it happen? I always think about it. It's literally through all that training. If you're just joining us, you're listening to the Common Denominator podcast. My guest is Rainer Schimpf, who was almost swallowed alive by a 15-ton whale. Next week, we'll explore the very lucrative world of collectibles and chat with Brandon Steiner, a pioneer in sports memorabilia. Among his many achievements, he's partnered with the Yankees, the Cowboys, and Notre Dame to cultivate their collectibles. He'll share expert insight on building his sports marketing empire. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Now, back to the show. How did you originally get into wildlife photography? It's something very specific, and it's probably a big passion of yours, I assume.
Indeed, yeah. I started taking images at the age of 11, and we had classes at school even, which I loved. And then from there on, I took pictures. And eventually, when I ended up in South Africa to open my own company, at the beginning, nobody would actually believe what's out there in the ocean in South Africa. So we started to take images and video and stream those. And I went all over the world to do slideshows at the beginning and later video presentations. And then my photography wasn't as, or is maybe still not as professional as many other photographers are. So a lot of the crews and the companies came to me and they said, Rainer, you got a great picture there, but we can do it much better, but you know where the action is. So we'll book you because you can show us where it is. And also you have the understanding of how to put the camera in the situation that we actually get the frame. And that's basically how we grew up the company and how we are succeeding over the last 23 years in South Africa and other destinations in the world where we offer similar experiences and trips. And yeah, I mean, I learned a lot of lessons out of this particular incident, which you're probably going to ask just now anyway, because what came to my mind is it is a very effervescent experience to see how that whale actually realized that there is something in his mouth which doesn't belong there, and the sensitivity to understand that. So a lot of people don't understand the marine and in particular the cetacans and the behavior, but there is huge amounts of operators out there in the world who try to put people in the water and try to give them experiences. So we started basically to train operators, to train institutions and even government bodies to identify whales, to identify whether the area is suitable to work with them in terms of tourism, and for the operators in respect of the legality, which is different in each country and each region, to put people in the water and interact with the whales and dolphins safely for the animals as well as for the humans. And we've done that now in a couple of areas successfully, and I think it's a great thing. And this is one of the definite things which came out of that event.
And I'll tell you something, my favorite experience, which I didn't even expect, when I went on safari with my family, I was privileged to go to Tanzania to see the Great Migration. And specifically, we were with some guides, and they were saying, if we can get the leopard like running or the lion together with the baby while we were just kind of driving by and just watching nature. I live here in Miami, but being able to experience that literally sits with me. It's probably 6 or 7 years later now. And I could tell you, there's nothing that compares to that trip and going on safari.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
To see that. And just a side point, which I thought was hilarious. Maybe you could tell the audience, what's your son's name, by the way?
Yeah, my son is obviously he's 24 years old already, so he was born long before that incident, and his name is Jonas.
Well, there you go, right? My favorite, probably top favorite story in the Bible is Jonah and the whale. So that's just really funny point. And have you ever had any similar, like, kind of close encounters like that, through the years?
Well, not indeed like that. I mean, the whale thing was very special, but obviously over 20 years we had a lot of first-class incidents. I mean, in 2008 we were able to document the first time ever that orcas actually prey on dolphins, and we took images of that, which was quite great, and it went around the world. And after that, people were looking for this, and then it was also discovered in New Zealand and in Australia and in Norway, and I guess even off the Californian coast, where now operators and private persons suddenly realized that the orcas also prey for dolphins. We had, during a sardine run incident as well, we had in Mossel Bay, actually also a hilarious situation where we stopped to watch a seal island, and we watched the seals, and suddenly a white shark popped up next to the boat. And now you must understand we have semi-rigid rubber ducks, which have pontoons, which are filled with air to sit on around the keel. So it's a hard keel hull, but the pontoons you sit on are basically filled with air. And the white shark came up. Everybody was very happy. Everybody put his GoPro up and everybody filmed. And the white shark circled around the boat twice. And on the second circle, he decided to try how a pontoon tastes. So it bit into the pontoon, which was quite hilarious at the moment because nobody expected that. And also the white shark realized very quickly that it's not a dead whale, because if you look from underneath up, a semi-rigid rubber duck really looks like a dead whale floating. So I think it was just a mistaken incident as well by the unexperienced shark. And once it had a mouthful of air, it disappeared as well. And we drove back to the harbor.
Wow. This is an amazing, amazing story, and I really appreciate it, Rainer. So how can people find out more about you and learn more about your story and the things that you do?
Well, firstly, obviously, you can go onto the website, which is expert-tours.com or DE, and then you can find me on Facebook with my name, Rainer Schimpf. And obviously, there's also the Facebook page for Expert Tours or Instagram expert.tours. So that's all the links to the social media. And apart from that, whoever wants to come to South Africa is most invited to book a tour with us. And whether professional or private person, we're open for everyone, and we'll try to find the right thing for you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rainer. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed. And it's been a pleasure with you, and I hope you enjoyed the show.
Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Rainer. Next week, I'll speak with sports marketing legend Brandon Steiner, the preeminent name in sports memorabilia and collectibles. He'll shed some light on a very lucrative and fascinating industry. Please subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode, and follow me on social media at @Popack. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon.